Hello, everyone. A warm welcome here from the Freiburg office in Freiburg in Germany. We are going to start our second online session of the POWERPOOR Train the Trainers program, and we are delighted that you have joined us again for exploring two new modules that we are about to bring to you. Next slide, please. What can you expect from this very session, as we have already had the possibility to look into the session of modules 1 and 2. I would like to remind you to take the seat of the trainers, listen to what the presenters are bringing to you, pondering the Slido questions, also in the way of using those potentially to your stakeholders. How can you use the questions that we are asking? How can you use the material that we are bringing to you, using them meaningfully to address your target audience? So that is one purpose of, and a very important one here to highlight in particular, because we would like to make this training work and work as best as possible for our target audience. So in that sense, in your local context. We are going to provide you the opportunity to learn and have an overview about, as I said, two new other modules we're going to dive into today for you to train others, and then to become an energy supporter or a mentor. Actually, indeed, we are already, since the last project meetings decision, on the way of forming you as energy supporter and mentor. Maybe not all of you will undergo the certification process, as you will not take part in the exam, but most of you will do so. So in that sense, listen closely. You have also here within the session the opportunity to become even more familiar with the approach that some experts of us have developed in terms of the tools for you to understand their concept, and then to carry out this work together with your trainees. And last but not least, it is your opportunity to learn about new approaches, new tools to alleviate energy poverty that we have gathered at this very moment on a local and EU level. And we are, of course, also keen to develop this further and also hear the feedback from you, how those tools and those approaches can be used, and which of them are most effective. Next slide, please. Having said that, it is my pleasure to now once again introduce our team on ICLEI side that are managing this Train the Trainer program. We have our colleague Alice Daniela Torres, who is sort of the mastermind in terms of conceptualization of this training program, together, of course, with many partners of you and your contributions. Then we have Julian Imana. He is managing this program also as of today, guiding us through the different modules. And then we have two experts engaged, topical experts, so to say. One is from our communication side, Priscilla Jordao, and then we have Arthur Hinch, who is our community energy expert. Having said that, I hand over now to Julian. Thank you.
Thank you, Karsten. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for your welcome. Welcome, everyone. First of all, as in the last training session, I would like to give you a few housekeeping rules to go to webinar. Sorry, I'm having some problems with this. Okay. Yes, we would like to tell you to feel free to ask questions to our panelists, of course, in the question and answer section you might find in the right side panel of your screen. And also we will have this time more question and answer sections during the whole session. So you might raise your hand in those cases, and we might give the floor to some of you to say your questions out in live, so that all of us can hear your questions and answers from our experts. Then you have to know that you cannot unmute yourself, so we have to do that ourselves so you can speak in these sections we said. And please note that we will record this session, so if you don't want to be recorded, please then don't ask to say any questions live for us. Then after the online sessions, you will receive an email with all the relevant material that there might be, and a survey for you to give us feedback on the session. And finally, please note that all the training material that you will see today here, it's already available in Microsoft Teams. Okay, so having said that, we will like to start with a little warm-up, just like the other time. So please, in your browser, in your computer, or just taking your phone, for example, access slido.com and type in this code you can see here, 995598. So I will give you a second for you to go there, please. And I will share now the Slido for you. Can you see it here? Remember, the code is 995598. Okay, so assuming some of you have already gotten here, we would like to know, what did you have today for lunch? In case you had time for having lunch, we hope so. So in that case, could you very quickly tell us what you had for lunch? Pancakes? Oh my gosh, that sounds like a breakfast. Spaghettis with sausages, that sounds good. Chicken? Nothing yet. Okay, that person must be really hoping this to finish soon. Salad with tuna fish, Chinese food, rice and beef, pasta, parmigiana. Okay, salad is waiting right now. Wok too, great. Soup. Okay, many answers. I see you already got familiarized with the Slido. Lamb with potatoes. Well, we can make a recipe book after this session. It might also be helpful for the project somehow. Ham and cheese sandwich. Okay, thank you for your answers. Now we can move on to the next question. What have you learned during COVID times? Okay, so this is just for you to type some short answers. If you got anything positive from COVID times, even if the only positive thing you can get from it is learning how to use Zoom. Okay, patience, that's a good one, yeah. Passion, oh wow, that sounds cool. How to work in pajamas, yeah, we all learned that, let's be honest. Being close to the closest, taking care of myself, going to the office, not so bad after all, exactly. I can really relate to that. Use of online tools for meeting, use a mask, cook ramen, okay, but I hope it's homemade ramen. Self-discipline, Valerie time, yeah. Home office is good, okay, so I see some people like going to the office, or enjoy home office. Liberty communications, yeah, things can be changed, homework. Express my love to my beloved, okay. You really learn things from the pandemic. That's great. You have to see the positive side. And let's move to the, okay, I love staying with friends. Yeah. Let's move to the last question now of the warm-up. Did you manage to do the homework from last session? This might come as a surprise to some, so let's see your answers. Let's see the discipline of this group. Okay, yes, no, ooh. Okay, I'm glad the yes is winning. Also, some people are confused by this existing of homework. Okay, let's say, yeah, most of you didn't do it, but the yes is winning. That's what counts. Oh no, the node's getting higher. Okay, let's stop this before the negative answers win. So thank you all for answering the Slido. And now let's move to the session again. So let's go back here. And now I would like to give the floor to Alice Daniela. So please, Daniela, if you can start, explaining the agenda for today and then getting with the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. I think that with after your warm up, everybody now is ready for a super 2-hour session, our second Train the Trainer session of the PowerPoor project. Thank you very much for connecting again. Thank you for the ones that did the homework, the ones that would do the homework hopefully today, and also for the ones that watched the session, the first session that couldn't come on the first session and now are here accompanying us. Thank you very much for that. So the agenda for today, again, we have a very tight agenda as always in this Train the Trainers workshop, and this time we try to be a little more, to give more time, as Julian said, to have some questions and answers with you. So we would like to have more interaction on your side. We will cover, of course, Module 3, Part 1, Part 2. Then we will have a short break of 5 minutes at 3, and then we will continue with Module 3, Part 3, and we will cover Module 4, covering the aspects of energy poverty and cities. At the end, we are going to have a short discussion, if possible, on how we are going to prepare workshop number 1 that will be coming in April. So we are all ready to continue preparing our work in PowerPoor. If we go to the next slide, I just wanted to remind you a little what were the key takeaways of modules 1 and 2, the last session. So just for you to remember, the objectives of module 1 were, can we go next? It was to make you familiarize with energy poverty concepts, policies, and multi-level governance on a global and EU level when we talk about energy poverty. Secondly, of course, to know and present to you the PowerPoor approach, the whole concept that we have on the project, and of course have a description of the tools that are being developed, the ones that are already finished, and also to understand the role in alleviating energy poverty. Also in Module 2, the goals of Module 2 were to identify the types of energy poverty alleviation policies and measures developed by different stakeholders, with emphasis in the results, and of course focusing on the citizens facing energy poverty episodes. Anna Mari shared with us several examples of policies and measures implemented in Europe and Croatia. And also we received from the DOOR team information on key aspects of household energy performance to provide us, trainers, supporters, and mentors, tips and tools to improve household energy performance. So I think that is important to remember what we were discussing in the last session. So in order to, if we go to the next slide, Yulen, I think that is important to reflect a little and just to make this a little more interactive, we are going to do some questions to you on the content of the different models. So to see if you remember something, and also for us to prepare any additional information that might be needed in order to cover the information that we did. So I will encourage you to please respond this first question regarding to module 1, which is, where can we find the biggest repository of energy poverty indicators from Europe? Please, can you vote? Very good. So we have several responses. Thank you very much. So almost all of you have voted. So, sorry. So you cannot see the question anymore, but the answer is the Energy Poverty Observatory, the EPOF. Yes, we can find other information in Eurostat and of course the PowerPoor library, but the major repository is the Energy Poverty Observatory. Okay, so most of you did it great. Thank you very much. Now we go to the second question. Okay, so also What is the new initiative that will replace the Energy Poverty Observatory? Remember that we talked about this? Can you answer, please? Yeah, I think that everybody has clear this answer. Perfect. Good. So, yes, the answer is the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. Okay, so please remember that this will be the new platform where all the issues of energy poverty that the European Commission is going to deal, we will be here. Hopefully in the next session, when the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub is set, we are going to provide you a little more information about this, but very good, you are almost there. Then another question of module 1, and this is more related a little with our tools. Why to use the PowerPoor tool? Okay, if someone asks us, energy supporter or mentor, say, why do we have to use the PowerPoor Act tool? What would you say to them? Here you can select several. Yeah, please. Okay, very good. Please vote fast, fast, fast. Very good. So yes, the answer here, we have a very diverse kind of activities, but yes, please remember that it's especially to enable households to implement energy efficiency measures and also to empower households to be aware of their energy consumption. The right answers were the 2 answers below. So just for you to remember this. Then going to another, to module 2, remember module 2? So now we are going to go specifically to more technical aspects. So here, what is the biggest energy consumer in a typical household? Please, you have 5 seconds to vote. This we should know all very fast. Okay. Perfect, heating and cooling, that's right. Heating and or cooling, that's right. Here everybody was very good. We have someone that says cooking, yeah, probably could be also, but mostly is heating and cooling. Another question. Okay, air humidity indoors is increased by? How air humidity in indoors is increased by? This morning, Julen and Aitor were talking about the humidity in San Sebastián in Donostia, Spain. How can this humidity can be increased? Can we answer this? Come on. Very good. Yes, the answer is all the above, okay? Is all the above. We can have a mix of these. So it's important that we know this because this will have some impact in the energy efficiency of households and also all the measures that we can implement. And then another very nice question on module 2 is here. Choose small and medium investment energy efficiency measures from the list below. Here you can select several of them. Remember, this is a small and medium investment energy efficiency measures. Please respond. I will give you 5 more seconds. Very good. Almost 70% have voted now. Okay, good. Okay, we have a diverse response. So according to our expert Daniel from DOOR, that he shared this question, he mentioned that small and medium investments are especially draft proofing, as you say here, and also replacing all household appliances with energy efficiency ones. Okay, so you were very good on this answer. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that we need to finish this in 2 more minutes. So now we are going to really know who did the homework, because now you are going to answer questions related to the homework, okay? So this is the first question related to the homework and the tools used. How long did it take you to fill the power target profile? we will know the one that didn't do the homework if they answer bad this question. Very good. So George and Eleni, please take note of this. Very good. So yes, from 3 to 5 minutes, that is the average. Just for you to know that there was no right or bad answer on this question. This was only to see an average time of filling the power target profile. So we know that most of us took from 3 to 5 minutes. That's very good to know. Then the second question is related to the homework, and also that will help us to improve the tool, is what data did you find more difficult to include in the survey? So while you were filling the survey, what was the data that was more difficult for you to include or to find? Okay, very good. We have a diversity of votes, please. Very good. We really need this information in order to shape better our tool, and also to understand in the future how our trainers and households and mentors and trainers are going to use the tool, how to improve them. Okay, so here you can see, yeah, that the most difficult part was data about heating and also about the quality of the construction. That is a very interesting thing. Also the data on electricity consumption also. I think that here we can see that most of the data that we manage on ourselves, we are able to answer, like the data on annual income, but the ones that come from third parties is kind of difficult to assess. This is a very important aspect. Then the final question, because I think that time is short today, and this is also important for our tools development here. What is the reference time period your energy provided uses on the electricity bill you receive every month, or how often do you receive this information? Yeah. Can you provide this information? This is very important, because in order to define how much energy I am consuming, we need to know the period of time where our consumption is measured. Okay, I think that this is diverse from the different countries in Europe. Very good. So I'm going to share the results. So yes, so most of us receive this information from every month. So we have the period of every month, 2 months, 3 months, but we have several that get this information every year. That is a very interesting point. Anyway, I think that this is a very good information that we will use, especially George and Eleni and the N2EI team, in order to shape better our tools. So thank you very much. So with that, I think that it's enough for today, enough questions. So it looks like we all studied a little, so that is very good. So now, Julian, we can start the presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela. That was nice for refreshing a bit what we saw in the last session. But now we are going to get deep into the module content. So we will start with module 3, part 1, collective innovative actions for energy poverty. So I would like to give the floor to Andrea Boggi now. So I'm going to let you share your screen, Andrea. So when you wish.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm sharing the screen. So you should all be able to see it.
We see it, yeah.
And also in full mode. So first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for participating in this Train the Trainer program. My name is Andrea Boggi, and I'm a senior research and project manager for the European Crowdfunding Network, which is the European association that represents the interests of the crowdfunding sector at the EU level. And together with my colleague Mauricio and with contribution of colleagues from Copernicus and Guyana, we will illustrate the role of collective innovative action to support energy poverty and how you can use them and what they can do for you. The module in particular is going to be divided in 3 parts. The first one is going to be an introduction to collective innovative actions. We'll illustrate what we mean by that and the basic action that can be used for in terms of support and alleviate energy poverty. The second part would be focused on crowdfunding and innovative finance and what it is and how it works. I will first provide an introduction on the basics of crowdfunding, and then my colleague Mauricio will provide to explain how it works and the key elements to create and launch a crowdfunding campaign. And then the third part will be managed by Aitor, which will illustrate the basic of collective energy initiatives and how to set up one and how to properly use it. So,
Andrea, I think I'm not sure if you have changed your slides, but we see the first slide only.
Let's see. No, strange, I cannot. I try to put play, but it's.
I think it got frozen, Andrea.
Sorry?
I think it got frozen in our screens.
Yeah,
so
maybe I'll interrupt in a second, and then let's see again. For some reason, it's still on pause. Maybe let's put it like this, and let's put it again in big screen. And no, if I put it, let's do like this.
Now, yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Okay, you see it now? Yes.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
this was the main, sorry, the slide about the content. And in terms of goals, as you can see, the basics is to present, collecting of the actions, explain what is crowdfunding and how to use it, as I said, and then explain collective energy initiative, what they are and how to create one. So let's not waste time. So in terms of collective of the actions, what we mean by that? Overall, it's pretty straightforward. Collective of the action as energy communities or crowdfunding can be, they are based on the very simple ideas, which is that there is strength in numbers. You pull together your resources to achieve goals that you would not normally be able to with your own resources or funding. In a big sense, this is not really that different from what people normally do. When you normally have some big objectives and you don't have the resources to do it, you reach out to your family, you reach out to your neighbors, and try to, they can help you to either provide money or to assist you in achieving those goals. Collective innovative action are just an expansion of this idea, where instead of reaching only to your family or close relatives, you reach out to your neighborhood, you reach out to your wider community, and in some cases, even just a worldwide community with common interests. More specifically, when we defined it, we differentiated it in collective energy initiative and collective finance, because they have some difference in terms of objectives. And when we speak about collective energy initiatives, usually we mean when people tend to come together to find new pathways to access energy or to tackle specific issues. Most of you probably are quite familiar with the concept of cooperatives. And in a broader sense, that's what they are. It's just people coming together, create an organized community to achieve goal, and in this sense to tackle energy poverty, empower citizens in respect of the energy market, and find resources to either implement energy solutions or switching from traditional retailers to renewable energy ones. In terms of basic structure, we will go more in depth afterwards with a specific part dedicated to this section. But overall, they can be distinguished in two different categories: energy communities on one side, which themselves can be also distinguished between citizen energy communities and renewable energy communities, and energy cooperatives. Of course, seeing like this, it might seem a little bit too complicated. This is just because there are different legislative frameworks at European level to distinguish between the two. But as I said, we will go more in details afterwards. Briefly on community finance, of course, overall, it's very similar in concept. In the sense, it's just to pull together the resources of a wider network of people to achieve common goals or goals that otherwise would not be available. And this is usually done by pulling together financial resources to achieve specific projects and create a more wider network and raise awareness of specific challenges in this sense. In our sense, it's energy related ones. what can those two do for energy poverty? Overall, there are different ways in which you can use a collective approach to tackle the energy issues. We identified 5 main categories, but these are just examples of what you can do. It can be much more than that, and there are differences in the way you can approach it. The basic, again, is just to find the appropriate answer, pulling together the resources in order to face this. So, very briefly, the main and obvious one in which way you can use collective innovative action for energy poverty is to just pay upfront costs for energy installation or energy efficiency measures that you would not be able to allow by your own otherwise. In this case, you reach out to your community in a cooperative ways. You create your own crowdfunding campaigns to ask for the funding to put up the upfront costs that you cannot do, and then use the revenues from the energy savings to repay those funding, if it's a sort of loan type of way or in other ways. In other ways is the fact that, of course, a community approach can allow for economy of scale approach to energy installations, energy efficiency investments, which means that if you by your own want to do this kind of intervention, that will cost a certain sum. But if you bring together your community, you do it in a collective way, of course, you can reduce the actual cost of this investment on your own personal portfolio. A third way, of course, is to try to support what are called off-grid energy for poor households. In this case, we tend to mean rural communities or communities that are normally not attached to the national grid, that could not otherwise support the installation of a dedicated power plant or energy supply. And this type of initiative can help them find the funding and find the resources to create this energy source and then supply themselves with energy separate from the national grid. At the same time, of course, this can be also useful to just simply pull together resources to buy energy and power from suppliers at a more convenient price, because you pull together resources. Again, it's a concept of economy of scale, and that could help the communities to just lower their costs in a very significant way. And last but not least, the community approach and the collective approach could also just be a way for people that are otherwise excluded from this type of investment to just get into the game, participate in supporting energy transition and alleviating energy poverty from the outside, while at the same time, gaining an investment return, whether it is, financial or in terms of social outcome, that could just help them be part of the energy transition instead of being excluded just because of they don't have the large scale investment opportunities. As I said, these are just some examples of what can be done. We will see later on more specific and concrete examples of specific best practices in this sense, but it's just to give you a sense of the different areas in which you can apply a collective innovative action for energy poverty. Now, going more specifically on talking about crowdfunding and innovative finance, as I mentioned, I will just provide you a basic idea of what crowdfunding is, what it can do, and then I will pass the floor to my colleague Mauricio to explain more in details how you can use it and how to set up a campaign. So first of all, what is crowdfunding? As we mentioned before, community finance or crowdfunding is pretty simple. It's just a practice of funding a project or a venture by raising money from many or small amount of money from a large number of people, usually via the internet, which enables to enlarge the crowd and the opportunities that you have from your direct contact network. How do you do this normally? There are some basic elements, of course. You need your specific project or ideas. You have to potentially have the access to internet in order to reach out to the crowd and reach out to the platform. You act through an intermediary, which is usually it's an internet-based mechanism. In this case, are crowdfunding platforms. And you have to provide tangible or intangible benefit for this contribution. We'll see in a few slides the different types of crowdfunding can be divided based on the type of reward of return from the investment they can provide. And those are just the basic elements you need to keep in mind when you want to approach crowdfunding. To put it in more simple ways, it's a three-way structure where you have the promoter, which is the one who wants to promote its idea, wants to finance its project. In this case, any measures that want to alleviate energy poverty, can be an energy efficiency installations. Then you have to reach out to a platform that's going to be an intermediary. They're going to promote your project. They're going to highlight the best way to create the campaign, and then we'll promote it to the crowd. And then, of course, we have the crowd that will engage through the platform with the idea and provide the funding to the promoter to realize his projects. How does it work? As I said, there are different types of crowdfunding models you can try to apply for, and they largely can be distinguished by the type of return to the investment they provide. The main categories, of course, are non-financial and financial ones. Non-financial usually are basically donation of reward type crowdfunding models, in which for donation, of course, it's a more philanthropic enterprise or a gift, where people, like a normal donation, they just give money expecting nothing in return, if not just the willingness to contribute to a socially relevant cause. And usually this type of investment tends to be up to 10,000 euros. Reward, it's very similar in concept, in the sense that it doesn't expect a financial return from the investment, but usually people will provide that type of reward for the money that people are put in. This reward can be, in case of a company, for example, usually it's a product or an advancement of the product they're developing. In the case of social relevant cause, usually just some perks that are relevant to the social cause. It can be promotional T-shirt, it can be name tags on a new building that's being constructed for a social cause or something like this. And on average, these kind of projects tend to be the one up to 30,000 euros or more or less. Switching to the financial side, of course, this is more similar to what a normal bank can provide, although, of course, this is decentralized and acts through the crowdfunding platform, and can be distinguished in equity, which is a very simple concept of investment for a part of ownership in the enterprise or the venture, where people can just put up the money to be part of the process. And usually this is on average around 350,000 euros. And then lending, which is a basic lending system where people invest money for investment return with the interest rates. And this, of course, tends to be the more financially similar to banking system, with projects ranging between 500,000 and 2 million euros. Overall, needs to keep in mind that these figures are just sort of a benchmark, but the reality can be very much different. You can do a lending on equity project which much less resources, between 30,000 and 50,000. It really depends on the type of financial return that you want to provide and your ability to attract the crowd with a non-financial approach, if that's your choice. But this, we will see it a bit more later on. One small word I will also give to the concept of match funding, that usually it's a transversal approach where you can choose one of the model I described, be donation or equity or lending, and then you can try to establish a match funding framework in which an external partner, that can be either financial institution or just a private donor, will match the contribution, which means usually, the crowd puts 50 euros and you have an external party that will decide that for each donation, it will match it in up to a certain amount. You put 50 euros, he puts 50. And this is something that can be used very well, especially with the institutional funding or public authorities, that can help maximize the return and the collaboration between private project and more established regulatory institution. Of course, as I said, all these type of models have different approaches based on the form of return, but also on the motivation that needs to be kept in mind when trying to choose. As a basic outline, as you can see, donation is more philanthropic. Therefore, the form of return tends to be intangible benefits, so just a participation in social cause. And the motivation of people to fund this usually just intrinsic social motivation that wants to participate in some social endeavor. Reward in that sense is very similar, with the only addition that, of course, in addition to the social cause or the social motivation, you can also have some tangible benefit. As I said, it can be simple perks to full-fledged products or more concrete type of returns. Crowd lending, of course, and equity crowdfunding being investment, they play a lot on the financial return as a motivation. So people tend to be more involved in order to have a substantial return in terms of what the money they invest. That said, it can also be well combined with social motivation as an add-on for people to say, if I have to invest here or there, I will decide maybe to invest in a more socially oriented project. And this could be quite a good way to promote projects that want to support energy poverty. Why to use crowdfunding? The basic line is, of course, it has shorter times for collection of funds compared to a more traditional bank loan, and it's, of course, less bureaucratic. Means that it can be faster and much easier for people to approach compared to normal and traditional financing. And of course, it needs to keep in mind that crowdfunding is not a standalone. You can also do crowdfunding and traditional finance at the same time. You can combine them in order to maximize your return. You can, for example, reduce your request for a bank loan in order to complement the rest with crowdfunding, or you can apply for national incentives for energy investment, and then add crowdfunding as an addition to cover part of the rest of the funding. There are different ways to combine these. And the important part here is to keep in mind that when you design your crowdfunding campaign, it's not a standalone. You can use it together with other financing, and you can combine them in a very effective way. In terms of more specific benefits, of course, crowdfunding is extremely useful tools to validate your position in the community, because you are presenting yourself to the community and you receive feedback. So you create a positive feedback loop that can help you establish your ideas in the community, make them aware, and then also improve your own idea through a feedback cycle that's you can see whether you are successful or not and what you need to change. And therefore, it's a very easy way to just approach the crowd, approach your environment, and see what they think of your idea, and then maximize the return in terms of also of concept, not only money. And then we'll just pass to my colleague Marisa to illustrate how all of this can be put into practice. So Marisa, the floor is yours. I don't know if Marisa is there.
Yes, we can see Mauricio, but we cannot hear you, Mauricio. We can see you.
You're muted, Mauricio, I think.
Can you hear me now?
There.
One,
Yep.
two, 1, 2. Okay. To make it quick, as Andrea was already pointing out, the different typologies and the possibilities of using crowdfunding as a transversal tool, there is a practical side that has to be taken into account. This is the how we're going to do it. We provide this training for POWERPOOR, thinking specifically on the practical side of it. At this point, how do we scale from what we know for crowdfunding into how do we use it? We have to be very precise on how to set the objective, identifying your audience. Even a comment that appeared in the beginning of this talk. Setting a funding target, you've already identified, thanks to Andrea's slide, in which you say, okay, depending on the amount of money that you need, you use one or the other. At least an orientation doesn't mean that it's the final one. Yes?
1 second, Mauricio, we are hearing a bit like robotic. Maybe turn off your camera so that your internet goes better.
Could you hear me better now?
A bit
Is it
better. Oh, yeah.
A bit better. Okay. Sorry about that. And identifying that type of crowdfunding, it is important and relevant to set also the different steps that have to go through, and even the marketing side. Could you pass the slide, Andrea? Slide. Okay, and understanding the funders, which are our networks, which is the media coverage that we can do, which are the people around our projects, which is truly our network. When we say community and collective finance, how can we rely on them? And afterwards, the understanding of the actual platforms. There's a conversion rate, how many visits are we going to get, and how much people is going to donate or support our project financially. This is something that we have to take into account. Also, understand that they're going to be our investors. Those are our crucial for developing our project. Next slide. Okay. Understanding that target audience, when we're talking about collective finance, we have to understand the 4 F's: family, friends, our personal funds, and sometimes those fools. I always say that I prefer fans. That those persons that are participating in our project and trust us. Next slide, please. Next. Okay. The campaign outline, it's important to understand the objectives, the proper project type, or even the stage or the type of capital that we may need, the funds that we are actually aiming to, the objectives, and whom is our target audience. Who are we going to apply to? Who are we going to try to convince, attract to our project, to bring in the financial side to it, not just to know the project, it's to actually fund the project. Next. How to choose the right crowdfunding platform. This is where the case studies and the introduction that is going to be done afterwards, understanding which tools are the ones that are the best for this, are one of this diagram that you see, which is the type model, which is the local or regional or national scope that we need, which is the focus that they will have, or even the cost structure that the platform would have to take into account. Next slide. Understanding due diligence of those platforms are going to be something to identify which is a similar project that we would be participating in our platforms, and similar projects that are funded by that platform. Next slide. Setting a crowdfunding campaign has to be built on a convincing story, on defining what is funding, the community energy, is it a infrastructure, if it's supporting construction of an initiative, understanding the why, the reasoning, how are we going to do it, which are the small, medium, or large objectives that we want to do, what we want to succeed in, who is participating, the key target of that community, who's the promoter, which is the organization that is going to run it, when or where, if it's relevant for the purpose, what are the for explanation, what extra support do we need, or what can we offer in exchange when we were saying, okay, it's a donation based, you're already impacting a specific occasion and a specific initiative. If we're talking about reward based, what do we offer in exchange as a reward? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it a participation? Is it a membership? That perception of value applied into it. And it's also a call to action in which you could make people participate on your crowdfunding campaign by joining forces. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. And organizing that strategy, when we were saying those people, target audience that are already engaged with my project and they're already participating, it's very clear, at first, and it's our first public and our first person that will give us support. But what happens with those ones that don't know our project? Which are the channels of communication that I'm actually going to use? Is it an email? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Different social media and networks? Is it an event directly? Is it creating those spaces in which you could donate and create a collection, own style? Is it a forum? Is it other networks? Is it other communities around the project? Next. And finding those tips to take into account. You'll see overview the different tips that we have organized in the training. Next. And when we were saying those, what do you give back? You have to understand that those right incentives. If it's the motivation that we have on donation, is it the motivation that we could find in reward, or the equity side, or even the lending part? Try to understand that which is the point of view that somebody that will support you economically would have the information from. Next. And one of the key points is understanding that money doesn't come from scratch. When you launch a crowdfunding campaign, there's a lot of preparation, understanding what's previous before you, setting a strategy on your fundraising, researching other platforms, other initiatives, which is the type of funding that they actually received. There's a lot of work that has to be done on a preparation on to-do list. Is it the video? Is it the tone? Is it the communication plan? Is it the activities that I'm going to organize on the different moments? How do I connect with my community? How do I connect with building those messages, and how do I reach out? It's a previous even before I actually launch a crowdfunding campaign. That campaign, when it's online, how do I execute it? How could I evaluate my different points of base? How do I correct if the numbers of my crowdfunding campaign are not working out in the way that I should? And if that crowdfunding campaign is successful, how do I follow up? What do I engage with my community on a long-term relationship? I can give them frequent updates on how I'm improving my project, how I'm delivering that project, which is the managing expectations of my community, which are the results that have to be there. If not, reply to them is the strict communication over, and always keep them involved. The first crowdfunding, and once again, what Andrea pointed out, it's a combination of tools. Crowdfunding, it is just a first step that could give you other steps in the future, and you have to understand that there's a long tail with your community. And last but not least, next.
I think that's it.
Yeah, we had this different cases that we wanted to show and be best.
Yeah, these are just some example, but we will go more in details at the end of the module with Rita on one of them in order to highlight exactly some specific examples. But you will be able to check them in the presentation.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea and Mauricio. Yeah, Mauricio's sound was a bit bad in the beginning, but I have to say, I think it was perfect for everybody now in the last minutes. So yeah, we solved that. Now then, we are going just to move forward. We have a little question and answer section now. So Daniela, I don't know if you see any questions worth sharing or something to say here.
Yes, Julian, thank you very much. Thank you also, Andrea and Marcelo, for your wonderful explanation about crowdfunding. I think that having you as a PowerPoor partner is wonderful, because we are receiving from first-hand the information about crowdfunding. Especially for me, I will be sincere, this was what totally new. Thank you very much for sharing. We have one question, a couple of questions in the questions and box chat, but also I would like to invite, if someone would like to do a questions, you can also raise your hand. We can check, Julen, if someone is raising the hand, and we can give the floor. But in the meantime, we have one question to Andreas regarding the different amount of money on each of the crowdfunding examples that you were mentioned, the categories. So Chris Mervelly mentions that there is a big gap between this 30K and the 350K euros difference from the one category to another. Can you, I don't know if you can explain this?
I briefly touched on it, but of course it's better to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, what the number I highlighted in the presentation, they are just industry average that we see that there are some major trends. But as I mentioned, that doesn't really mean anything in the sense that when you choose your projects, you can choose whatever model you want for any amount of money. You just need to see which one is the best fit. It's not only dependent on the money you're looking for, it's dependent on what's your value offers, as Mauricio mentioned, and it's dependent on the type of crowd you try to engage. You might have, a small investment project of 20,000 euros that maybe is for the renovation of a project building, and that could be maybe even tailored to professional investors or to companies. Therefore, you can choose to use a lending on equity approach, even if it's a very small amount, because you see that there's a returning value for them in maybe participating also as a construction company and be part of the enterprise. There are different approaches, and they're really specific on the specific project. As I said, the only important thing that those are broad differentiations that can serve as a guideline at the beginning, but then you have to tailor your thing based on your need. So don't focus too much on the different values.
Perfect. Very well clarified. Thank you, Andrea. There's another question for Mauricio. Mauricio, you mentioned how to set up a crowdfunding scheme. How long does it take? That is one question. And then we will give the floor to Karsten also that has a question. Mauricio? We cannot hear you now.
No, yeah. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. The reason is the preparation 1 week that you have it up and running, or you can take 3 months to co-create your project correctly with your community and engage eventually campaign. You have the maturity that you will get in one case if it's an emergency and you're tackling something that had to be quick, and you're moving your community by passion, or is it something that you're engaged by work, with them, eventually growing up and scaling up together in that small scale, small ladder that I was showing you at the beginning. The better, the more cohesive the better your crowdfunding campaign is going to be. So your time, you're good, but when you launch, you have to be ready for a marathon.
Okay, that's a good point. We had some trouble hearing you 100%, but I think that we were able to listen to you as much as possible. Thank you, Mauricio. I don't know if Andrea, you would like to complement something?
No, I think as Mauricio said,
okay.
There are different time scales for all this effort. It really depends on the maturity of the idea. I would just add that it's always good to take time before to really think through and organize your campaign, even at the beginning, before launching, in order to have at least, it's very good when a campaign starts well. So if you already have very good preparation before with some engagement beforehand, it's always good, because then you can start with some people already on board, and then you keep from there. But as Mauricio said, it's a marathon, so it's not one thing you prepare and that's it.
Okay, very good. Good reflection. You have to have everything very good before launching. That is a good point. Karsten, your question, and then we go to the break, please.
Yes, as in particular, maybe relating to the marathon, the runners run faster, potentially also with the cheering crowd, so more people to act. And actually, that is the question which I wanted to focus on. Andrea, thank you for sharing the 5 options, how actually the people that are facing energy poverty could alleviate themselves to some extent also from energy poverty. And in that sense, I wanted to understand if you have collected to you the 5 options offered, good practice that we could look into. For instance, knowing the refurbishment rate, which is quite low. Also craftsmanships, for instance, are not potentially coping with the demand. So actually we do need many people to refurbish their own houses, but also the houses that are potentially not owned by themselves under guidance of experts, of course. So these are all elements. I think you touched upon them or hinted at least towards them. Is there an information source that we could look into further good practice? Thank you.
Of course, I mean, within the module itself, we will present several best practices to highlight all the cases we can find that are very successful in order to give, a highlight and guidelines for people wanting to do something similar for that. More best cases will also be included in the Power Fund tool provided by PowerPoor when it will be online, which will be sort of a tool that will integrate online all that we talked about, the basic of crowdfunding, how to do it, and best practices, and some also guide to find platforms in your region. That said, in terms of additional examples, of course, if you, for example, talk about refurbishment, it really depends on also on the different types of buildings, the different stakeholders involved. So it's also really difficult to find a repository of these kind of best practices. I can give 2 examples very briefly. One, for example, we are involved in another project that can be also relevant in part for PowerPoor, that's European funded project CTC, that's trying to develop financial schemes, including crowdfunding for public buildings, refurbishment of public buildings, and they're trying to build up a sort of repository of how to best do it, combining private funding, institutional funding, and crowdfunding as well. Especially for public building, because that's what works best. Another case is another project also is more dedicated to football stadium, for example, and refurbishment of football stadiums, and we did a best practice collection on that. Those type of things are very varied. The types of buildings are very varied. The principle tends to be, of course, the same, and there's everything in between, from changing light bulbs to refurbishing the entire buildings. So it really depends, but there's a lot of cases one can use as reference, and we will provide them as much as possible and tailor it to the audience.
Perfect. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. And yes, okay. Thank you very much, Carson, for the question, because you have really opened a good question, which is case studies, practices. We are going to see this after a 2 minutes break that we are going to have. So you can run to take a coffee or water or something, because we will start in 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Andrea, Mauricio, for this wonderful presentation and for sharing the module content. Thank you very much. 2 minutes and we go back. Thank you. Okay, I think we are back. I already went to take my tea. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. So, Julen, now floor is yours.
Okay. We hope you had time to take a coffee or a tea. And just to make sure that you are still awake, we would like to share this quick question with you. Please answer. And let's see how the situation is right now among our participants. So do you feel awake yet? Okay, I think we have a bit of everything. People is voting, so yeah, I see that people are back from the break yet. Okay, I'm gonna share the answers with you so that you can see it. Okay, so some people have the batteries charged, a few of them need some more coffee, and like half of the people will do their best. Okay, so we really ask you to do your best, please. But now we will continue with the session, and we have now module 3, part 3, designing and implementing collective energy initiatives. And I'm going to give the floor to Aitor. So when you want, Aitor, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. You, Julen, set me as a presenter?
Yeah, it's taking a minute. Okay.
Okay, I guess that you are now seeing my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it in full screen mode now?
Yes, everything great.
Okay, and now it passes, yeah. Okay, so good afternoon to all, and thanks for the organizers for the nice organization of this session. And as Julen mentioned, I will talk about the collective energy initiatives. Andrea very well and made an introduction about the collective energy initiatives and about how can they they help to alleviate energy poverty. And so I will go quickly and smoothly through all the steps, starting from what they are, then differences, energy cooperatives, and what they can do for energy poverty. Then also we will explain and quickly short guidelines to and how to create an energy community, and then Rita will jump in to explain a best case study. So community energy or energy communities, what are they, what can they be? And well, they are a way of organizing or they are a way of citizen organization and in relation to energy initiatives and collective energy initiatives. That's why they are called collective energy initiatives, which can be energy communities or cooperatives as well. And they can be entities, but they don't have to be. But yeah, they are initiatives or entities that are related to energy activities, and they can be services or other types of activities, but always related to energy issues. And then there are market actors, and actually a new type of market actors that are now introducing on and including in the Europe's directives, and then we will explain later as Andrea already mentioned them. And they actually can be a collective switching campaign. They can be collective renewable energy production. They could be collective investments in solar and so on. But these types of actions are not necessary energy communities. So energy communities can include many types of activities and services, but each of them is not necessarily an energy community. And they are based on open and voluntary governance. So they are democratic and they are open to all participants, open to everyone who wants to participate. And they are also the ownership and control is by citizens or local authorities or small or even medium enterprises, but there is not this monopoly of that a big company or any big entity controls or owns these initiatives. And also it is important to highlight that their main objective is not profit making, but they have other objectives such as social or economic benefits, as well as local economic benefits. And regarding the European directives, there are two types of definitions for the energy communities. One is the renewable energy communities, which was defined in December 2018 in the Renewable Energy directive, and the other definition is included in the internal electricity market directive, which was set in June 2019, and they differentiate two types of communities or energy communities. And one, the renewable energy communities, as the name explains, are only for the renewable energy sources, while the citizen energy communities are not necessarily related to renewable energy. They actually could be based on fossil fuels based. But in terms of type of energy, for example, the citizen energy community only includes the electricity, while in the renewable energy communities, not only electricity is included, but also thermal energy and so. And then just some different aspects are, for example, the proximity that renewable energy communities and only consider projects that are close to the consumers and close to the participants actually, while the citizen energy communities can also have a more broader scope geographically. Then regarding the participant aspect, the citizen energy communities, they actually are open to basically any participant one, while in the renewable energy communities are not so much and are not so restricted. And then autonomous, the autonomous structure or the being of autonomy community is very important in both of the cases. In the citizen energy community is not defined, but in the renewable energy community it is defined. And then also the effective control, and it is very much taken into account. When it comes to the legal structures of the energy communities, and actually there can be very much types of legal structures. It very much also depends on the country structure or the country specific characteristics. But we as POWERPOOR, we think that energy cooperatives are the best legal forms for the energy communities because of many reasons that we will see in the next slides. Well, and to begin, they are very in line with the energy communities, as here is stating the definition that they are a type of social and economic enterprise, actually a legal form that enables citizens to collectively own and manage energy-related projects as well as services. And why is it in line with energy communities? Well, for example, because of the democratic governance, that meaning that one member, one vote. It can be that one person decides all the decisions or makes all the decisions in the cooperative, but each of the persons has only one vote. And then also they are related to renewable energies and to produce it or to consume it or to share it or to use other types of managing energy. Then it is open to participation, so people or participants or citizens can participate there economically by investing or by sharing financial projects or in other ways. And it is also important to highlight the social aspect and the local aspect that energy community and cooperatives, they seek to reinvest all the investments, all the benefits that are created throughout these initiatives. And then just to mention that they exist 7 types of principles in the International Cooperative Alliance. They have established these 7 principles for all type of cooperatives. They are not necessarily energy cooperatives, but all types of cooperatives usually have these seven principles, which is a very interesting base for energy communities because they are very in line with the energy communities. And one is the voluntary and open membership, which is also a very important aspect to include energy poverty in the energy community. Also the democratic member control and one member, one vote. Then the member economic participation, that all the members also can in a parallel or in a fair way participate economically in the initiative. Also the autonomy and independence, meaning that no external entities or persons are controlling these initiatives, but they are actually the actual participants who take the control of it. And then they also are focused in the training and knowledge sharing of the participants. And another important aspect is that there is external help between different types of communities. There is a and there exist networks of communities that are supporting each other. So that's very important also when considering energy poverty. And lastly, the concern for community, that and it is very important to consider which is the community and how to help it. When regarding what can the energy cooperatives can do, or also the energy cooperatives and communities, and there are many fields where these can improve the situation of the energy poverty. For example, in the accessibility side, economic or governance accessibility, for example, with fair prices or fair decisions that are beneficiary for all the citizens, not for only few ones. Regarding the solidarity, the fair conditions for all the participants, all the consumers, all the producers, and the support, as I just mentioned, and sharing the knowledge, sharing all the capacities that this cooperative or this initiative has. Then the sustainability aspect, the social sustainability is very important, keeping in mind that all participants are well introduced, that there is this fair and decision making, and so that means that social integration is an issue also considered in in these collective energy initiatives. And environmental benefits, besides all the global and scale environmental benefits, also regarding the energy poverty, for example, and in decreasing the health risks through less pollution, and so are a thing that can help to energy poverty, because energy poverty is related to health issues as well. And then regarding the local economy, for example, for citizens means that these energy communities are made from citizens, or citizens are backing it, but also they are the last beneficiaries. So it stays local and it doesn't get out of the local economy or local context. And also the financial autonomy, that meaning that they are not dependent on the external actors. And some examples just to mention about what they can do to further explain it. For example, it is the sharing of renewable energy by producing it or consuming it locally. And this sharing energy means that they can assure a more fair or more cheap energy to people in energy poverty. Also the collective purchasing, and this is very related to what Andrea and Mauricio explained about these crowdfundings, for example, that how a person in energy poverty can face these high investments that many of the measures suppose. So in that sense, communities for example, cooperatives or energy communities can support this and making the investments. And also in the reinvesting in the community, for example, random mechanisms, and which we will see in a case study, are very interesting mechanisms. Well, any participant or any member of the cooperative can donate little amounts of money to be then reinvested in the community for the benefit of the people or the households in energy poverty. In that sense, a case study is a initiative between ENERCOOP, the cooperative, and Energy Solidarity. They have a fund called Solidarity Fund, where based on micro donations, people donate or give money to the cooperative and then the Solidarity Fund. So this then uses this money to give to different associations who are supporting energy poverty and energy poor citizens. And just to finish, because I'm using quite a lot of time, and just 5 steps for how to create an energy community, just the general guidelines in terms of what can we do to start our activity of energy community or energy cooperative. Firstly, the most important thing is to get organized, is to build up our own group around us and checking who are the people who are interested, people who may have special skills when related to energy communities or energy cooperatives. And in that sense, the motivation is very important. Having technical skills is important, but more important actually is having this motivation and having this inner motivation, or this and other motivations that are not economical ones. For example, that people are really keen to be involved in these initiatives. And in that sense, for example, also identifying key leaders around you, it would be very important for the community development. Some people are these leaders who could take the lead to bring forward the initiative. And then also it is very important to consider what other existing groups are around you, for example, and they don't have to be related to energy, but they can actually be other types of initiatives, but they can be very good to help you and to support you in the creation of the energy community, or they could actually be willing to be involved in these collective energy initiatives. And then also it is important to keep engaged, to keep active all of this team. And then the second step would be defining the goals and keeping clear which are the goals where we want to reach, and in the community where we want to reach, what do we want to do, which is the activity we want to do, and so. So firstly would be the making the questions to ourselves that who are we, or who are you, what do we want to do, where we want to reach, and so on. Related to that, creating a solid narrative is very important through the storytelling, for example, and through making these questions, then you can answer yourself and you can create this narrative of how you start, where did you start, which is your motivation, where do you want to reach, with whom, by who, and so. And in that respect, one of the main and one of the most important things is defining clearly the activities which are going to be your main activities that you will develop during your process. That doesn't mean that that would be the only activity. For example, we as Goener, we produce and consume renewable energy, but also are involved in other types of services. So in this case, would be important to define which are the main activities, but then not to forget that other activities also can be involved every time. And then having a clear plan and a clear strategy are very essential and in terms of an energy cooperative development. The third step would be choosing the legal form. As already stated, there are many types of legal forms, but we as POWERPOOR, we think that the best legal form for an energy community is definitely an energy cooperative, because of many reasons, because they are democratic, because they have other main interests that are not economic profit, social, local, and environmental interests. And in that respect also, and as many cooperatives has this regional reach, they can give you visibility, and visibility can be given to different cooperatives through the networks and other types of methods. Already, actually, to say also that there are already rules and there are already existing structures to cooperatives, so you don't have to start from zero, you don't have to start from scratch. There are already these, for example, 7 rules and other types of structures that you could already use, and being supported by other different cooperatives, it can be very much easier to you to start your own new activity. And yeah, and just to say again that energy cooperatives are a solid legal form. They are a legal form that gives you this opportunity to take further your goals as an energy community, as other type of initiative. And in the fourth place, there's the look, and you have to look for support, because if you want to go alone in this fight, you may not reach far. So it is very important to find support and in different categories or in different ways. For example, support from local and regional administrations can be in form of legal or fiscal procedures, legitimacy, administrative procedures. They can support you in different aspects. And also, as mentioned already, other cooperatives can support you in their existing activities. They may know how to do this, how to do that, and so it can be general support, but also the operational support, how to consume energy, how to make the bills, and so. Then other companies or professionals who are involved maybe in energy-related activities are very important also, because they will provide you most probably the technical support. So it can be service provision or other types of technical support related to production of energy, to consumption, and to managing energy, and so on. And also it is very important to consider the support from associations and social movements or other individual citizens that will give to you this social legitimacy, like social support, and also a broad reach, and in this respect it would be easier also to reach the energy poor citizens, because we know that it is sometimes difficult to reach them. In that sense, for example, local associations are very important because they already have this direct contact with people in energy poverty. And to summarize in this point, that creating a network around you is very important, considering these different categories of support. And to end with the general guideline, the last step would be actually starting in your activity and sharing it. That means that already when you have done all of these previous steps, you actually start in the activity, but then it is also important to share this project and to keep in mind that it is an ongoing process that never ends. So once you start, it is like a marathon. And now I will give the floor to Rita.
So good afternoon, everyone. The reason why in this module we focused on collective energy initiatives and more in energy communities and energy cooperatives, it's because there are, as the name says, collective energy initiatives, which means that citizens can come together and create something from scratch. In the previous slides that Heitor shared, and Mauricio and Andrea, we explained how you can create such collective energy initiatives from scratch, so step by step in a general way. And now I'm going to present the case study of Copernic, actually, because it's an optimal example of a situation when citizens back in 2013 came together, and in the first citizens were only 16 citizens that come together to create this energy cooperative. And right now, in 2020, we are more than 2,000 members, so more than 2,000 citizens that have joined our energy cooperative. But in the beginning, there were only 16. And the reason why these 16 citizens decided to form an energy cooperative is because they wanted more renewable energy to be a part of the Portuguese grid. They wanted to promote renewable energy. And in the process, they felt that it was important to actually support the social sector and those entities that struggle to pay their own electricity bill. So the solution was to reach out to these ONGs and charities, public schools, libraries, and talk to them and say, okay, if you are struggling to pay the electricity bill, we might have a solution. And that solution is the citizens that were a part of the cooperative of Copernico to come together in a crowd lending model and to lend their money to the cooperative, so the cooperative can install the PV project on the rooftop of those charities and of those NGOs. And when the project is active, the cooperative shares the proceeds from the sale of the electricity being produced there, renewable electricity being produced there. So those proceeds are shared between the members that lend the money in the cooperative and those entities that struggle to pay their electricity bill. So it's a win-win situation that was promoted only by citizens in Portugal. And the impact so far is very big. We have 26 projects scattered throughout Portugal in this model, with more than 1.85 megawatts of installed capacity. This is decentralized renewable energy projects that were only made possible because citizens come together and lend more than 1.75 million euros to make those projects happen. And we can reduce the sum of the energy emissions and this electricity, this renewable electricity that is being produced and it's being fed to the grid, it enables more than 1,087 families to be supplied with this renewable electricity. So obviously energy cooperatives are an excellent example of how citizens can come together to try and tackle some kind of obstacle using renewable energy, and obviously that can be used also to tackle energy poverty. One way is to come collectively and install PV panels to try and support charities or NGOs, or you can actually do it for neighborhoods as well. You can help those citizens actually become an energy community, and you are a part of that process as well. And as Heitor said, you can actually do in other energy cooperatives where the citizens that have that electricity and consume that electricity donate a little bit of their energy bill to create a fund, and that fund is passed on to other to other entities that actually help to refurbish the homes of the energy poor. Because in this model that I'm sharing here and talking to you about regarding energy cooperatives, we are only talking about renewable energy and ways to introduce it to those entities or to those neighborhoods that can be identified in energy poverty. But sometimes, and all of us know, that the problem is regarding the buildings themselves and how can we refurbish them. And energy cooperatives can actually help in that case to foster a fund that was made by the members and the citizens that can be applied to the refurbishment of those homes. And I think one thing that is important to have in mind regarding all the partners of the project is that these case studies that we are going to share here on Model 3, it's important to think when we are giving this trainer to the future energy supporters, is how can they be applied to our country and to our context, because we know that we have different types of regulations in all of our countries. So it is very important to really think about how can I have this example or try to adapt this case study in my community, in our community, in our country. So I think that's it. Daniela, I'll give it back to you, or Julian. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita and Heitor. So now we are going to have again a little questions and answers section. I think we have some questions, right,
Yes.
Daniela?
Yes, Julian, we have one question for Heitor, or I think Rita, also based on your experience, you can also answer, which says how to deal with the economic problem when talking about cooperatives once there is an initial payment that some people don't manage to reach, and it is difficult to replace the payment with voluntary work or something near. Is there any solution? Heitor? We cannot hear you, Heitor. I think you're muted.
Yep. Can you hear me now? Yeah, in that way, I think that PowerPoor actually is seeking to these types of how to and how these energy poor citizens or citizens or people without any enough resources could take part. But for example, the crowdfunding initiatives can be actually a method to already establish an energy community or an energy cooperative. So in that sense, these solidarity perspectives of some people and giving some money or donations to these people in energy poverty could be a very interesting aspect in that sense.
I would also like to add that sometimes what we have seen here in Portugal is when people are trying to join Copernic and have these difficulties, we actually analyze their own electricity bill that sometimes is with another energy supplier. And what we have found in most of the times is that the amount of money they are going to save by changing their electricity bill towards Copernico, it's enough to pay out.
I think we lost Rita. Rita is frozen now. Rita? Okay, I think we lost Rita.
Yeah.
I hope she will come back soon.
Yeah, let's see if she can solve it.
Yeah, anyway, we can, I think that we can continue. Thank you very much, Heitor. Thank you, Rita. Thank you all module 3 participants and also presenters. Thank you for sharing this. Just to remind all the participants that the presentation will be ready. Of course, today we didn't have the time to go all through the slides, but you will have access to it. And I think that now we can move on very fast. We only have 20 minutes more to cover the next module, which is module 4. We will try to be very brief on the ICLEI side, which is covering energy poverty in cities. So Julen, please, if you can introduce and then give the floor to Arthur.
Yes, okay, thanks Daniela. Yeah, so now Arthur and Daniela will be presenting Module 4, Energy Poverty in Cities. So it's related to embedding energy poverty. Oh, sorry. Are you seeing the slides? Yeah. Embedding energy poverty action in local sustainable energy and climate action planning processes. So I'm gonna let now Arthur share the presentation. So yeah, Arthur, when you wish.
Okay, can you see?
Yes.
A little large. Is good?
Yes, we are just missing to see it in full screen mode.
Okay, I have it on full screen mode with on my end. Otherwise, I can share my entire screen. Wait 1 second. Okay, now you should be able to see everything, and now you should be able to see it in full screen.
Yeah, it works now.
Nice.
Okay, Arthur, you want to introduce the module, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so thank you very much to Julen and Daniela, and also to the previous speakers for the previous module. So I'm quite excited now to introduce this module, module 4, on planning energy poverty actions on the local level. And specifically, we want to talk here about the role of cities and that the role that cities have in contributing to alleviating energy poverty from a holistic perspective. So, of course, all of you know, most of you might know that local governments, of course, are very engaged when it comes to well, planning energy and climate policies on the local level. And the question really is, how can we integrate local climate and energy planning effectively with tackling energy poverty at the same time? So we're quite excited to jump into this topic now and to guide you through it. So the module content has 3 parts. So we want to briefly reflect on energy poverty challenges and opportunities in cities from a holistic perspective. Then, as I mentioned, make a direct connection to tackling energy poverty within the framework of city sustainable energy climate action plans, or CCAPs. And lastly, we would also like to invite you to consider a more holistic and system-based approach to tackling energy poverty by introducing climate and social innovation tools to drive energy poverty at the local level. Drive energy poverty action at the local level, of course. Yeah, so we want to understand the importance of energy poverty action as key inputs to CCAP, so to local energy climate and action planning, and to identify social innovation and climate tools as effective and system-based approaches to tackling energy poverty. Daniela, I will hand to you.
Thank you very much, Arthur. So I will be very brief in order to give you an introduction of why this is important from a city perspective. And as an ICLEI working in this for several years, we have identified that energy poverty is a sustainable energy challenge that cities has, but at the same time, we see it as an opportunity that cities will have also to capture in the following years. If we go to the next slide, we just can see that that here are some of the general challenges that all of the cities in Europe face when we talk about energy poverty. Of course, we have that there are some districts in the cities that do not have access to modern forms of energy. We know that citizens are not able to pay the bills. We know that there's a restricted local energy sourcing. Energy is imported from other sites outside the city boundaries. And in some cities, there is limited citizen engagement in energy communities initiatives. If we go to the next slide, also we can see that, of course, why this is happening in cities, because of course there are several things that happen. Low income on a city level, high energy costs, depending also on the sources and energy market that the cities has, and of course that there's a big condition when we talk about the poor thermal efficiency in housing, especially. So all these interactions take place on a city level, but also brings opportunities for cities. And this is the message that we want to transmit. So in the next slide, we can see that if cities are able to really align their energy poverty policies or activities with the local sustainability concepts, other opportunities may arise. Of course, to contribute to attaining their local energy goals, also to engage citizens. This is something that cities are continuously looking for, how to engage citizens properly in different activities. Of course, it could foster the innovation on developing district energy systems more modern, more green, more sustainable. Of course, to introduce innovative energy finance schemes as the ones that we have learned, crowdfunding schemes, new schemes that cities are not familiar with. And of course, it could also help cities to drive the adoption of smart technologies for energy management on the local level. So just to let you know that yeah, we understand, and for us it's very important that the different partners that are going to do the work in the field know that in order to advance in the sustainable energy agenda on a local level, it's very important that also the city takes place in this journey, that the city has a role and to support in the development of energy poverty actions. So briefly, just to go to the next part, which is this issue about the CCAPs. Some of you are familiar with a CCAP is, this Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Project process, but we would like to explain you why this is important for PowerPoor. So if we go to the next slide, we can see that okay, another one. Okay, so the cities here, perfect. That one is good. So within Europe and also globally, lots of the cities working on sustainable energy and climate action from an integrated perspective are signatories of the Covenant of Mayors. You might have heard of it. Probably your city is already a signatory of the Covenant of Mayors. And the Covenant of Mayors is an initiative that has three main objectives: to accelerate decarbonization, improve climate resilience, and also alleviate energy poverty. This is something that is very important. So all the cities in the world, and especially in Europe, are working towards these climate action goals. If we go to the next slide, also it's important for us to know that this is a huge initiative in Europe also, and the cities have to, a part of their commitment, they have to develop what we call the CCAP. If we go to the next slide, we can see that the CCAP, this is the step 2 you can see in the planning that cities have to do, is a plan that cities have to deliver, including different targets and actions to reduce emissions, to adapt to climate change, and now to reduce energy poverty. And this is an important thing because all the changes that cities have to implement now when we talk about energy poverty is just starting to be framed by the Covenant in this year. This is a new pillar that is being developed by the Covenant of Mayors. If we go to the next slide, and then also let's go directly to the how to do it, Arthur. Next one, please. There. Okay. So just one before. There, perfect. So just for you to know that all the cities, and as in PowerPoor, we are working with different partner cities, and this is very important that we know when we work and approach to them. The cities formally, which are signatories of the Covenant, they have to include the CCAP under two frameworks, okay? First, they have to include energy poverty actions in their planning process, I mean in the Sustainable Energy Action Plan. They have to assess energy poverty, they have to identify the vulnerable groups that are facing energy poverty episodes, and also they are called to design actions to address energy poverty. That is the first part, the action part. And then the second part that cities have to do is that they also have to design a strategy, indicate who are going to be the beneficiaries and their strategies, and also define indicators that help them to assess this performance in the long term. So there are several documents and very few literature on how to make this real into the city planning process. And there is only one document. You can go next slide, Arthur. There is one document that was published by the Energy Poverty Observatory that we all know, that mentions that in order to design energy poverty policies in cities, we have to follow like 3 steps. Okay, so the first, to do a short list of the measures that can be applicable on a city level. Of course, here we can identify high cost or low cost interventions. This is something that cities can do. Secondly, cities are also called to explore this measure, identify target groups, and also to identify which stakeholders should be involved in this process. And finally, to define the measure. Okay, so it's initially to do this scoping process and then define the measure, and of course comes the implementation. Okay, so in that sense, as I said before, there is very few literature on how to do this on a local level, and that's why it is very important for us to know that that we can take this document as reference. But the most important thing is that as PowerPoor project, the PowerPoor approach also includes a solution to this issue. Can we go to the next slide, Arthur? Well, this is about the indicators, very general, that the Covenant of Mayors is working on setting up these indicators, and cities will have to report on that in the future. But the most important thing is in the next slide, we can see that well, these are some example of how the energy poverty status in Greece. This is something that our colleague is from NTUA and working already in Greece. They have identified how municipalities are introducing energy poverty in Greece. So this is one example, so you can see how cities are facing this, and we have the case study of Greece. If we can go a little faster, you can have access to the presentation. And of course, there are different types of actions that the municipalities are carrying on: training, energy efficiency measures, the use of renewables. But there is very few, how can I say, examples of really cities doing this. We have this example in Greece, but there is very different information across Europe. And the next slide, Arthur, is that, yes, that one. So that is that there is still a lot of more to do on energy poverty on a city level. There is a need to work on an integrated approach. Qualitative, quantitative information is needed to help municipalities in this journey. And of course, the PowerPoor toolkit, our tools, and the overall methodology can be used to achieve these goals, and especially the energy poverty guidebook, that this is part of our work. So if we go to the next slide. We have, remember everybody, that we have the PowerPoor Energy Poverty Guidebook, and for energy planning is one deliverable that we have to support local authorities in alleviating energy poverty. So as I said before, there is an initial work that the Covenant of Mayors and cities are doing in addressing energy poverty, but there is no systematic approach to make this happen. There are very few guidelines, and of course, cities have to work little more on that. And we as PowerPoor are going to work on this Energy Poverty Guidebook for energy planning. But of course, in order to design action, in order to be more innovative in this field, that is where the new concept that Arthur is now going to present comes around, because we've known from the experience that energy poverty is more than an energy issue. So it's very important to think this broadly, how to convince municipalities to act together with the key stakeholders that are represented in PowerPoor. So with that said, Arthur, I hand over to you so we can briefly go on this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so indeed, I think Daniela did quite a good job, I think, in explaining the basic understanding behind why it's important for cities to work holistically on the topic of energy poverty, and that there's a very strong connection between tackling energy poverty and holistic planning, energy and climate planning. So understanding, of course, that energy poverty is a very holistic and broad issue that needs a very in-depth way of approaching it. we would suggest that we need innovative approaches to doing so, and these innovative approaches we would refer to as social and climate system innovation approaches, which we'll be happy to introduce to you now, and to introduce them to you as concrete tools that can be employed in the city context to foster the tackling of energy poverty as a holistic problem. So first of all, what is climate system innovation? So we would very much like to invite you to depart a little bit from the understanding that, and of course, most of you, I'm sure, have this understanding that tackling energy poverty is not only a technological issue, but it rather requires a good combination between technological and non-technological innovations that bundled together will contribute to alleviating energy poverty in the long run. It very much understands that we have to go beyond sort of silo thinking and approach tackling energy poverty from a cross-sectoral, long-term and interconnected perspective, saying that the problem of energy poverty is not isolated, but it exists within the greater city landscape, the greater policy landscape that surrounds energy poverty. Seen from the city perspective, of course, you will be familiar with, you will be familiar with different approaches that cities already are doing with regards to integrative planning. Of course, you know, the circular economy approach, you know, sustainable mobility systems. So we perhaps using the latter as a good example, saying that cities are thinking about intermodal ways of transportation, looking at the entire system that governs transportation rather than just how to reduce car traffic or how to increase cycling. They really look at the entire picture. The same happens for circular economy, but also it's based on the understanding that cities are integrated socio-technical systems which need to be improved altogether rather than tackling every sector individually. So the question is, how can we approach this rather innovative concept that gains more and more traction worldwide? Actually, how can we apply this to the energy poverty alleviation measures? At the same time, and here I'm connecting to the previous module, we would like to introduce a bit more the concept of social innovation. So of course, we have the example from energy cooperatives and crowdfunding, citizen energy and community energy, that all of this really is based around the fact that citizens come together to collectively try to solve a problem, which is a very mature approach and something that really deviates from the status quo of where it's only like, you know, single energy companies that hold all the strings in their hand. So social innovation is really a process of change in social relationships, interactions, the sharing of knowledge, and ultimately this leads to meeting environmental problems, but also social challenges and social problems. So all of this we think is very important to consider holistically again. This is why from the social science perspective, so social science and humanities perspective, we would like to introduce this concept of living labs. You will of course have come across this concept a few times already in different projects, etc. The concept that citizens, but different stakeholders in a city context come together and in sort of a very non-hierarchical, very down-to-earth way, identify what exactly is their common problem and how can they jointly solve it. So there's generally three stages to it. There's an exploration stage, there's an experimentation stage, and an evaluation stage. And you have to imagine, and here I'm borrowing from another project that we've been involved in, the POSEU project on prosumers, on collective prosumers in the energy union, where we brought together different stakeholders in the energy landscape, citizens, local governments, representatives from the council, local associations, consultancies, and they all come together and they ask themselves, okay, within this defined space that we call living lab, what is the problem that we want to tackle? And can we experiment a little bit to to change something for the better together? So the three stages, exploration, experimentation, evaluation, mean that at the beginning, you need to identify whether you have all the right stakeholders on board within the city context that have in some way a connection to energy poverty, to tackling energy poverty. And you have to ask yourself, okay, what is the joint vision that all of these stakeholders together want to approach? In this case, it might be tackling or alleviating energy poverty completely by 2030, for instance, within that set parameter of the living lab. You identify a certain vision and you co-create the actions essentially. So this can be different things. You can make minor tweaks to the system, policy changes, inviting new stakeholders to join the living lab, or experiment with new business models, try out crowdfunding, try out energy communities or cooperatives, but also apply the different tools that POWERPOOR has at its disposal: Power Target, Power Act, and Power Fund. And at the later stage of the Living Lab, when all these different interventions and things that you were tweaking have been implemented, you come together again and you evaluate, did it actually solve the problem, or did new problems arise? And here, of course, it's very important to also refer to the indicators that Daniela mentioned earlier, and to really see whether the Living Lab, the stakeholders together have actually succeeded in alleviating energy poverty, or whether something has actually become worse, which we hope is not the case. And these lessons learned, of course, we hope to also then transfer to the Energy Poverty Guidebook to some extent, so we're quite interested in seeing how we can do this. So now we would like to briefly talk about a few tools that you could consider exploring within the framework of such a systems approach. So as I said, and as has been mentioned in the previous model also, it's very important to not only apply creative thinking, but also to apply and really understanding that you're looking for support. So which means that you need to identify who are the different stakeholders that you want to have come together to jointly tackle energy poverty. So a tool that is being used often in climate systems innovation theory and thinking and systems thinking is something called stakeholder universe. And the idea here is that you come together with your initial group of people within the city context, and this process can, for instance, be facilitated by the local government itself. So local governments act as quite often as facilitators of such processes. You ask yourself, okay, what's the problem you want to tackle? In this case, it's tackling energy poverty, and you try to map out who are the different stakeholders, how influential are they within the general sort of energy landscape of the city, how adaptable are they to certain changes in the energy landscape and the energy policy, how interested are they with regard to solving energy poverty, and according to these parameters, you place them on different spaces on this universe, and there are different planets, and you try to make connections between all of these different stakeholders, and try to map out really sort of where is there certain money flowing, are there networks of different stakeholders that are somehow connected, and where one individual stakeholder is acting sort of as a gatekeeper. Some new connections have to be made here to enable a more effective network to occur. And the idea, of course, is not only to map out the network, but really to analyze in the end what makes the way that all of these stakeholders work together, what makes it work, and how can this process be made more effective in order to tackle energy efficiency more effectively. But it also helps you to actually get a real clear idea of who are the stakeholders that really need to be on board in your city to properly tackle energy poverty. So this is also a living kind of exercise. You can update this as you go along. And I mentioned also you have to tackle the idea of creating a shared future. And of course, you do not want to only create this future sort of unilaterally, but you want to do it within the Living Lab, or to co-create the future, in which case we suggest to use a tool called Future Radar. We won't really have the time now to go too much into depth in this current workshop. But in the next one, we can actually hopefully do a bit of an exercise on this. But the idea here is that jointly you will create a vision. So you work from the future, say 2030 or a bit later even. You have a certain goal in mind, so alleviating energy poverty. And then you want to ask yourself, you move back from this joint vision for the very far future, and you move back to identify certain changes that need to be implemented in the policy landscape, in the business landscape, in the cultural landscape that help you to achieve that goal. So you have done that, and you have to give it different timelines, and you map out which of these changes are more feasible. So you move them in different places on the board, and then you do the same exercise going from the current status quo. So you have a certain amount of energy poverty at the moment, and you want to ask yourself, okay, what concrete actions can we do now in the short term, the medium term, and the long term in order to achieve these changes which were jointly identified in the previous step? And you start to cluster them depending on which actions give you the most impact with the least amount of effort involved, so time and money wise. And this way you will be able to co-create a joint vision together with all the stakeholders that everybody can rally around, and that really allows you to keep a sort of system approach, because you always have not only all the different important stakeholders on board, but you consider all the different sort of cultural, political, economical factors that have an indirect effect on energy poverty, even though in the first sort of glance it might not, energy poverty might not have an immediate connection to it, but in the end, it really, there's a good chance that it's a much broader problem that needs a much broader solution than just a very clear, for instance, technical solution. And at the very end, and being conscious of time, of course, just again, I mean, at the end, when you've done all of this, you come together and you evaluate the process. You think, okay, are we on track to reaching the long-term vision? Are the right stakeholders engaged? Do we have to add new stakeholders? Who is benefiting, and how are the stakeholders benefiting individually? So are energy poor citizens benefiting from this? Are there other stakeholders benefiting indirectly from the general idea of tackling energy poverty? Are all stakeholders engaged to actively enable and have ownership of the project? Here again, linking to module 3 on energy cooperatives, for instance. And also, once the city or whoever stops to facilitate this process of Living Lab, will this process continue to function independently, or how much coordination is still necessary? And you can do all of this by using a certain set of key indicators that Daniela has introduced previously. And here I think I'm quite going over time soon, so I'm not going to talk too much in depth here, but we have a few case studies in the module which we invite you to take a look at, and we're might add a few more of cases where living labs are being now already deployed in current projects within the city context to tackle energy poverty. So you have to imagine that there's a city coming together with policymakers, representatives, local trade associations, companies, vulnerable citizens, and they energy that coordinate together what solutions can they jointly implement, and then they come up with energy audits and visits and tips for energy poverty vulnerable citizens, and try to do all of this again from the from a holistic perspective. I think I will skip the other two case studies for now, yeah, we'll hand back to Daniela to do the wrap up.
Thank you very much, Arthur. It has been wonderful how fast you have able to summarize all this content, and especially introducing this terminology of the living labs and the importance of thinking thoroughly when mainstreaming energy poverty actions, thinking on a long term, which is the role of cities in the planning process. Thank you very much, Arthur. And thank you very much for sharing this. As Arthur mentioned, we are a little short of time, but anyway, you have access to the module, and in the workshop that we are going to have in the following weeks, we will be able to do a deep dive on the different tools and covering the city aspect a little more closer. Thank you very much, Arthur. So I think with that, well, the key takeaways you already know. I think that is very important for you know that the cities also play a role when we talk about energy poverty. With that said, we can close the module 4, the presentation. We have several questions specifically on the tools. We have a question on the future radar tools, Arthur, regarding to also if it's the same as the backcasting tool. So probably we can answer that offline. We can send an email to Chris to answer this, because this is a methodological thing, but both tools are used to envision in the future. So that is the important thing. So Chris, we will answer you that separately. And of course, we will provide all the information and the guidelines to all the PowerPoor partners. So with that said, I think that we are done. Sorry that we have passed these 5 minutes. Julian, can we just do the final closing also with Karsten? And in 3 minutes, I think that we are set.
Okay.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Arthur. Yeah, and thank you to all the assistants, because most of them are still here, even if we are 5 minutes past the time. And yeah, now for closing, we just want to remind you that we have the first training workshop on 20th April, so you will receive news on that. Very quickly, just like the other time, we would like you to tell us which of the modules you would like to explore further. So if you could answer that very quickly, just for us to have that feedback. And having said that, okay, yeah, you are voting now. I will wait 5 seconds. Okay, this is great because you are really interested in a bit all of the modules. So, okay, that's great. Yeah, having said that, you will receive a survey and after the meeting, probably tomorrow, I think it will be sent. And yeah, now Karsten, if you want to say the very last words, please.
Okay, well, also thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed this meeting as much as I did, and also experienced the digital difficulties that we face sometime. So there are ways you need to deal with them eventually. So to say, also to take up all the good practice and maybe learn from what has and how things were presented here today. I think in particular, thanks for also the presenters to follow us and support us all with good work and interesting insights. So I'm inviting you now to build the climate system innovation together with your stakeholders to explore your stakeholder universe, so to say, to build up a convincing story, which was one of the messages from Mauricio, if I'm not mistaken, and then create your living labs together with the stakeholders to co-create, co-design, and bring us forward. So to say, thank you very much for listening, and we are looking forward to see you at the workshop. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. So Julian closed the session, no?
Okay.
You close it or I close it? If I close it, it's closed, no?